All right, so let's jump into a story that has, well, it has like Hollywood glitz, but it's also a true crime mystery.
Oh, yeah.
And today we're going to be looking into the life and the unsolved murder of Bob Crane.
Wow.
You know the guy who played Colonel Hogan in Hogan's Heroes?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Now, for those of you who haven't seen the show, it was this big hit back in the 60s.
Right.
And it was set in World War II
Okay.
in a POW camp,
Interesting.
where these Allied soldiers, they're always outsmarting their German captors.
So, like, The Great Escape, kind of?
Yeah, The Great Escape, but like with more laughs, you know?
Oh, okay, with a laugh track.
Yeah, exactly, a laugh track.
Gotcha.
So to guide us on this deep dive, we've got some excerpts from Crane's Wikipedia page
Okay.
and a really cool article from Entertainment Weekly.
Nice.
And even this local news article from the Claremont Sun from last year.
Oh, wow. So this is pretty recent.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting.
So be good.
Yeah. So it's a really fascinating case, I think, because for a lot of people, Bob Crane is, he's Colonel Hogan.
Right.
He's that really charming and clever leader,
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you dig deeper, you realize the real story. It's much more complex.
Right.
A little bit darker than the sitcom that he was known for.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a stark contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So let's rewind a bit. Before he was Colonel Hogan Crane had this pretty impressive career in radio, actually.
He did, yeah.
What was it about him that made him such a success in that world?
That's a good question. And I think it really comes down to his talent. His talent for connecting with people.
Yeah.
He wasn't just like playing records. You know what I mean?
Right.
He was a true entertainer.
He was a personality.
Yeah. And he had this way of interviewing people.
Mm-hmm.
He would draw out these big names, like Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And he used his quick wit and his charm to do it.
I've read that those interviews were legendary.
Yeah,
He could make even the biggest stars feel comfortable and really open up in a way that they didn't with other people.
Yeah, he had that effect on people.
I bet that was a huge part of his appeal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, his charm was a big part of it.
And that charisma. I mean, it translated so well to television.
It really did.
He got guest spots on, popular shows like the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Of course.
The Donna Reed Show.
Right.
And then eventually, of course, that led to Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, his big break.
Speaking of Hogan's Heroes, there's this story about how Crane got the script and thought it was a drama.
Right.
Not a comedy.
Wow.
Like, can you imagine?
I mean, Nazis played for laughs.
I know.
That's pretty unique.
What a concept.
Yeah, it really is. And it became a huge success,
It did.
And it made Crane a household name.
But even at the height of his fame,
Yeah.
there was another side to Bob Crane.
Right.
Like a side that would eventually have this big impact on his life.
And his legacy.
Exactly.
So
So this is where the story takes kind of a dark turn.
Oh, boy.
So Crane, he was struggling with sex addiction.
Okay.
And he had this massive collection of photos and videos documenting his encounters with women.
Wow.
And it wasn't just like a private thing,
Oh, really?
His friend, John Henry Carpenter,
Right.
who was this video equipment expert,
Uh-huh.
he was really involved.
Oh, wow.
He supplied the equipment, and he even participated in some of these recordings.
Oh, geez.
Now, Crane's son, he insists that these encounters were consensual.
Okay.
But some women, later, they claim that they weren't aware that they were being filmed.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, so that adds a whole other layer of complexity to this whole thing.
Yeah, that's tricky for sure.
It's like a complete opposite of his squeaky clean image,
It really is.
the one that he had on screen.
Yeah, total opposite.
So did this double life, did it start to affect his career at all?
I think it definitely played a role in his career going downhill.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, whether he meant to or not, sharing that kind of explicit content led to some bad press. And that really hurt his reputation in Hollywood.
I mean, especially back then.
Oh, yeah. This was the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And the public's view of celebrities was way different.
So true.
So true.
So he went from starring in a hit TV show
Right.
to taking dinner theater gigs.
Wow.
That's a pretty big fall.
It is. It's a dramatic fall from grace.
Yeah.
And I think it really shows you that he was struggling,
Yeah.
trying to balance his public image with his private life.
Yeah, that internal conflict, it's kind of key to understanding what happens next.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting.
All right, so we're going to get into that after the break.
Okay, sounds good.
He was living a double life, and then in June 1978, it all came crashing down.
Yeah, it did.
Crane was on tour doing this dinner theater production in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
And he was found murdered in his apartment.
Tragic ending. And shrouded in mystery.
Really mysterious.
He was bludgeoned to death.
Oh my gosh.
And they found an electrical cord tied around his neck. The crime scene was really horrific.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It sent shockwaves through Hollywood.
Absolutely.
And the rest of the world, really.
There was this actress, Victoria Ann Barry.
Yeah.
The sources mention her.
Yeah.
And she was supposed to meet him for lunch that day.
Uh-huh.
But when he didn't show up, she went to his apartment.
Oh,
and
what?
she found him.
Can you imagine walking into that?
Oh, gosh, I can't even imagine.
It's awful.
Absolutely awful.
Yeah, a really gruesome discovery.
So from that point on, the focus shifted to finding his killer.
Right, exactly.
And the investigation quickly focused on John Henry Carpenter.
Yeah.
You know, the friend that was so involved in Crane's secret life.
Right, yeah, it makes sense that he would be a suspect.
The sources say that he was the last person seen with Crane.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some bad blood between them, too.
Yeah, apparently their friendship had kind of gone sour.
Oh, wow.
And investigators found blood evidence.
Really?
Yeah, in Carpenter's rental car. But this was before DNA testing was as good as it is now.
Right. Back then, it wasn't that advanced.
Yeah, they had to rely on circumstantial evidence
Right.
and witness testimony.
Oh, and those can be unreliable.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this case, they often contradicted each other.
So even with a prime suspect, it wasn't a straightforward case.
Nope, not at all.
So what happened next? Did the investigation just stop there?
For years. Yeah, it basically stalled.
Wow.
But then in 1992,
Okay.
almost 15 years after the murder,
Wow. That's a long time.
investigators got what they thought was a huge break.
Okay.
They were looking at a photo from the crime scene,
Uh-huh.
and they re-examined it.
Okay.
And it looked like there was brain tissue in Carpenter's car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that led to them reopening the case.
And I'm assuming arresting Carpenter.
Yeah, they arrested and charged him with Crane's murder.
It's amazing how one photograph can just like revive this cold case.
It really is.
It seems like they finally had the evidence they needed.
It did seem that way, yeah.
So the trial happened in 1994,
Right.
and it sounds like it was full of twists and turns.
Oh, it was a wild ride.
Carpenter's defense team was really good.
Yeah, they were very skilled.
They questioned the blood evidence,
Right.
and they pointed out that DNA testing wasn't so reliable back then.
Exactly. And they also brought up the possibility of other suspects.
So they were saying that maybe someone else had a motive to kill Bob Crane?
That's right. They argued that his lifestyle, you know,
yeah.
and the secrets he kept,
Right.
they could have made him some enemies.
Oh, I see.
They basically said that he was a man with a lot to hide.
Uh-huh.
Someone who might have crossed the wrong person.
So it's like they're suggesting that there was a whole other side to this story that we don't know.
Exactly.
It sounds like a movie.
It does, doesn't it?
It's crazy to think this all happened in real life.
I know, it's a captivating story.
So in the end, the jury didn't think Carpenter was guilty.
Nope, they acquitted him
And he always said he was innocent.
right up until his death in 1998.
Wow. So even with the new investigation and the trial, we still don't know who killed Bob Crane.
That's right. The question remains, if not Carpenter, then who?
Exactly. Did the sources have any other possible leads?
They did. Actually, one theory came from Crane's son,
Okay.
from his first marriage.
Uh-huh.
He believed that his stepmother, Patricia Olson,
Oh, wow.
might have been involved.
His own stepmother.
Yeah, it's a serious accusation.
What made him think that?
Well, he said there could have been a financial motive.
Okay.
You see, Crane and Olson, they were about to finalize their divorce
Right.
when he was murdered.
Uh-huh.
And if the divorce had gone through, she would have gotten a smaller part of his estate.
Oh, I see.
But with Crane gone, she inherited everything.
Okay, that's definitely suspicious.
It is, yeah.
Did investigators ever look into her?
Officially, no.
Really?
But the suspicion raised by Crane's son just adds another layer to this already complex case.
It really does.
Makes you think about how messy personal relationships can get, especially when there's money and secrets involved.
Yeah, it seems like every new piece of information just creates more questions.
It really does.
It must be so frustrating for Crane's family to still not have answers after all these years.
I can't imagine.
And even with all the advances in DNA technology, the mystery is still unsolved.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
In 2016, they retested those blood samples from Carpenter's car,
Uh-huh.
and the results were inconclusive.
Just added to the mystery.
So we're no closer to knowing who killed Bob Crane.
Unfortunately, that's where we stand.
It's a reminder that some mysteries just never get solved.
It really is.
So there was this movie, Autofocus,
Right.
that came out in 2002,
Yeah, I remember that.
and it dramatized Crane's life and the murder investigation.
Yeah, I saw it.
Did it give us any new insights or perspectives that weren't in the other sources?
Autofocus, it definitely brought the story to a bigger audience.
I bet.
But it also caused some controversy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it really focused on the darker parts of Crane's life, especially his sex addiction.
Right.
And that understandably upset some of his family.
I can see why.
They felt like it didn't show the whole picture of who he was.
It's tough when Hollywood takes on a real-life story,
Yeah, it can be tricky.
especially one as sensitive as this one.
You've got to balance the entertainment aspect with being respectful of the truth.
Right, and being respectful of the people involved.
Absolutely. And in a case like this, where there are still so many unanswered questions,
Yeah.
different interpretations are bound to come up.
It's almost like Bob Crane's story is meant to be a mystery.
Maybe it is.
Even though we keep trying to put the pieces together,
It's fascinating, isn't it?
I think it also shows how much we're interested in celebrities
Yeah.
and the lives they lead behind closed doors.
Especially in Hollywood.
It reminds us that things aren't always what they seem,
Right.
and sometimes the truth is way more complicated than we think.
For sure.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What's that?
If you were in Bob Crane's shoes, facing the consequences of your actions, could you change? Or was this ending unavoidable?
That's a tough question.
It is.
Could he have escaped his past?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's impossible to say.
We can't know for sure.
But it does make you think about the choices we make
It does.
and how they affect everything else.
Yeah, the ripple effect.
Exactly. Maybe if he dealt with his addiction sooner
Right.
or been more careful about his relationships.
Maybe things would have been different.
Maybe.
It's a heavy thought.
It is.
It also makes you think about how this whole thing affected his family.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, losing your father in such a horrible way,
Right.
and then having his life picked apart by the media for years.
It's got to be hard.
I can't imagine.
His kids had to deal with the grief of losing him.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the public wouldn't leave his personal life alone.
Trying to reconcile the image of your dad as this beloved TV star
Yeah.
with all the things that came out after he died.
It's got to be tough.
It must be so difficult.
Yeah, it really highlights the human cost of this unsolved mystery.
Absolutely.
It's not just about finding the killer.
Right.
It's about the impact it has on everyone left behind.
This case is more than just your typical true crime story.
Yeah, it really is.
It's about how complicated people are.
Yeah.
And the price of fame.
The dark side of fame.
And the power that secrets have.
They can have a hold on us.
We've gone through a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
From Crane's early days as a drummer
Right.
to his success on TV,
Yeah.
and then his tragic death.
What a story.
What do you hope listeners take away from this?
I think the biggest thing is that everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, those stories are more complicated than they seem.
Yeah.
Bob Crane's life, his career, and his death, it's all woven together
Right.
into this complex and ultimately really sad story.
It reminds us that even behind the success and the fame,
Yeah.
there's a human story there.
There is a human being there.
It's a good reminder that even in the spotlight, there are shadows. And sometimes those shadows hold the key to solving the mystery.
The mystery that may never be solved.
Exactly. If this deep dive has piqued your interest,
Yeah.
you can find links to the articles we talked about on our website.
We've got all the resources there.
So if you want to learn more, you can check that out.
There's a ton of information out there.
This case has definitely given me a lot to think about,
Me too.
and I'm sure it'll stick with our listeners too.
It's a powerful story.
It makes us question what we think about fame
Yeah.
and morality
And truth.
and truth.
It's hard to know what's real sometimes,
That's a good point.
especially in cases like this.
Well, this wraps up our deep dive into the life and unsolved murder of Bob Crane.
That's a tough one.
It really is.
So many unanswered questions.
But it's a story that keeps people interested.
People love a good mystery.
Until next time, keep exploring,
Keep digging
keep questioning.
and keep diving deep.
We'll see you next time. Makes you wonder, right? If you were Bob Crane, could you have outrun that past, or was he headed for this tragic end no matter what?
It's the big question, right? Could he have changed it all? I guess we'll never know.
I mean, it really makes you think about, choices and how they ripple out.
It does, yeah. Like, what if he had gotten help for his addiction sooner?
Right. Or been more careful about the people he was involved with.
Exactly. Maybe it all would have been different.
It's a tough thought, and it also makes you think about You know, his family.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, losing their dad in such a brutal way.
Awful.
And then having his whole life just laid bare by the media.
Year after year.
For years. I can't even imagine what they went through.
That must be so hard.
To have this picture of your dad, you know, as this beloved TV star.
Yeah.
And then all these things come out after his death.
It's got to be incredibly difficult to process all that.
It really shows the human side of this whole mystery.
Right. It's not just about who committed the crime.
Right. It's about the people left behind.
It's exactly the ones who are still living with the impact.
It goes way beyond your typical true crime story.
It really does.
You know, it's about how complicated people can be.
Yeah.
It's about the price of fame.
That dark side of fame.
When it's about the power of secrets.
Secrets can really have a hold on you.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. From drummer to TV star to this unsolved murder.
What's the biggest takeaway you hope people get from all of this?
I hope they realize that everyone has a story. And often those stories are way more complex than they first appear.
You can't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. And, you know, Bob Crane, his life, his career, his death.
It's all tangled up together.
Into this really tragic story.
It reminds us that even behind success and fame,
there's a human being there.
Trying to figure things out.
Trying to make sense of it all.
It's like you said, even in the brightest spotlight, there are always shadows.
There are. And sometimes those shadows, they hold the answers.
The answers we may never find.
It's true. We may never know for sure who killed Bob Crane.
But it's the journey, right?
Yeah. The exploration. It's what keeps us coming back to these stories.
If you're interested in learning more,
yeah, we've got links to all those articles.
those are our website.
So be sure to check those out.
This whole case has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way.
It's a case that stays with you.
It makes us question what we think about fame.
About right and wrong.
And the truth.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the life and unsolved murder of Bob Crane.
A complex case.
No easy answers.
But still so captivating.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep asking questions.
Keep searching for the truth.
And keep diving deep.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.